Hi everyone, it's Alicia.
And Doug Miller.
And we invited our client and dear friend, Anna, to chat with us and you today to talk about her experience with core emotional healing and the private immersion that we did with her in Costa Rica. And Anna's in Costa Rica right now. Hi.
Hi.
Hey,
How are
Anna.
you guys? Yeah, hi Alicia, hi Doug, hi everybody. Nice to be here and I'm so happy to share my experience. So let's do it.
All right. Do you want to start by just sharing what you were experiencing and how you found us?
So my healing journey began years and years ago, but I could not really connect all the dots despite all the practices that I did, including yoga. And later on, I incorporated flower essence therapy that I used just as a user. And then I got so involved in the process that I even got trained as a practitioner. So I noticed that the process of opening up something started, but at some point I began to feel stuck and I felt that I need help. That despite all my analytical processes, there were some things that I needed to share to get the outside opinion on what's going on with me. And just to be able to share in a safe environment, which as I realized later, I did not have. So my healing journey actually took me to Costa Rica, where I moved in 2015. And I felt that the nature, the untouched nature and the very, very specific healing energy here in Costa Rica will help me to find what I later understood was my lost self. Because despite all the successes in life, all the achievements, I was not feeling happy. And at some point I caught myself that I wasn't even sure who I am and what I want and where I'm going.
Let me ask you a question about your journey, and we'll go back and forth. And, you have such a high level of insight. You know yourself very well. Did you do other psychotherapy work, or where did that come from?
I did a lot of psychotherapy for myself because I'm always researching, and like astrologically I'm Moon in Virgo. I like to put things, like categorize things and analyze them. And so I was like a Sherlock Holmes for myself. So I was reading many books, and actually that's interesting. Can I share how I found Alicia's website?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I was struggling. Something was going on physically with my body. Since I moved to Costa Rica, I couldn't quite understand what was wrong with me. Something was off. And I always believed that our physical symptoms are not just, like a mechanical representations of what's going on, but actually, as if I would interpret dreams, I was trying to interpret my own symptoms. And after certain researches and actually tests that I did, I found out that I have a candida. And what else? And severe food allergies. And it also was related to my liver being completely overwhelmed by what's going on, which I later understood that liver is like a storage for anger and repressed anger. And so my poor liver was taking all the blows from the environment and from, my emotional self. So I tried a couple of protocols for candida treatment. They would help a little bit, but then I would fall back. And I also noticed there was an aspect of emotional eating included into the picture. So I started working with a psychologist, and actually I worked in Russian language, which helped a lot because I'm Russian originally. Naturally.
And nature.
But it was also like scratching the surface, and some things that she was saying, they were just not relating to me. she would name certain things, but I would still, especially about my mother, about the family, about certain patterns that I'm having, but I still could not see how toxic some people were for me. And in general, just understand what to do with this information and how to process it and how to move on.
Okay,
So
well, along those lines, why don't you,
She was saying how she found it.
yeah, tell us what was going on right before, like in terms of your relationships with family and other relationships, how you were feeling, some of the dynamics. Yeah, not too much detail. And then what led you to Elicia?
Yeah. So, yeah, like what was going on is, as I said, I felt disconnected with who I am, and there were certain gifts that I have that I was very shy and not confident to show in the world. Doesn't matter what I did, how many medals I would and awards I would receive, there was always some kind of a doubt on the background. And what I also noticed is that it was a complete lack of support from my family. It doesn't matter how brilliant I was in school, how brilliantly I did in any professions that I did in my life. It was never a belief in me. And for some reason, it doesn't matter that I saw the results. I saw, like how other people saw my work and how they awarded it. I was seeking award from people that could not possibly give it to me. And same was with love. And I was constantly attracting the most horrible man possible in my life. And I was replaying the dynamic of my family and my parents that were constantly fighting all my childhood, and my father leaving and coming back, and me being always questioning if he's gonna choose like me and the family, right? If he's gonna stay or go. And somehow I got caught in the same pattern, like Groundhog Day, again and again and again. And at some point, I got really tired of it. Like, can't that stop? Like, what is going on? Mm-hmm. And it was very interesting. Since my last relationship, seems that universe actually gave me a break to do the spiritual work or inner work that I needed to do.
Yeah,
and
so it sounds like, going back to what you were saying earlier, it sounds like a combination of you were having some physical symptoms and you were also having emotional and relationship symptoms. And what I heard, one of the things you said, you could kind of see a discrepancy about your own kind of self-appraisal and the actual quality of the work you were doing. And so it sounds like you were beginning to get aware of some of your self-doubt and how that contrasted with actually some of the excellent work that you've done.
Yeah, and it all began with, I think one of the biggest steps that I did, well, I meditated for years and years, but I practiced Hatha Yoga seriously and regularly for a long time, and I received a 200-hour certification from Yoga Works as a Hatha Yoga instructor. And then this philosophy of yoga that helped me a lot, but at the same time it actually pushed me back. Yeah. And this I realized a little later. And one of the aspects that I didn't mention is that I felt numb. Like I was going through life like very stable, and I noticed that even when I had the worst scandals or breakups or whatever in my life, my partners were like, "Oh, yeah, but you are strong. You are so strong. We admire you. You're such a strong woman." And yeah, I'm strong. But honestly, what was happening is that and at some point I caught myself that people were expressing joy, expressing grief, they were expressing everything, and I wasn't expressing, and I was expressing nothing.
Yeah, the expression actually was the manifestation of your symptoms, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I was
doing the
I was so,
emotion.
I thought that I was in such a control in a way from in the point of yoga practice. You know, you're so dedicated, and my teachers were, oh my God, like every time you're on the mat, you're so in. Yeah, I was so in, and I was so calm and almost like a warrior that is constantly in some kind of an alert state, but at the same time, completely like an ivory tower. I built this protective shield around me.
Right.
And
in other terms for that would be spiritual bypassing and also dissociation.
Exactly.
So why don't you share how you found me? What were you searching for? And what was the process like from there?
So briefly mentioning like one other practice I want to mention, I was working with the shamanic practitioner for over 6 years, and he mentioned a couple of things that I need to move in me, but I could not relate because I could not feel it. He was mentioning something like like a river of sadness inside of me and other emotions, and he also mentioned women lineage, and that some emotions and some traumas are from this lineage. But again, I couldn't relate. He would say sadness, and I would get angry because I don't feel any. I don't know where to find it in me. So when a couple of candida protocols failed for me, and the food allergies were flaring up, and I actually was seeing the patterns that it will flare up when I was around my family, and when I actually was forced to do something that I didn't want to do, and they wanted me to be a good girl and perform my daughtry, whatever, the family duties, I would flare up the food allergies big times. So I was actually searching for spiritual meaning of candida, and that's how I found Elicia's website. And as soon as I landed there and started reading, I was like, oh my God, this is it. And I'm intuitive big times. That's how I was connecting to all my teachers. Out of all the yoga studios, I would pick, I know when something is for me, like this type of information. So that's how I found Elicia's website. And I was reading through, and I went to see the workshops, and I immediately bought the whole package. And at that time it was the four workshops, and actually you had the power of emotions, that workshop.
Yeah, being emotionally empowered. I think that
emotionally empowered. Yeah, it was actually you were having it maybe 2 weeks after I bought the whole package, and as soon as I started the inner child workshop, everything was just for me, like as the information, everything that you shared, and especially what really related to me is the trust. Like you need to trust the healer that you work with, otherwise the medicine just won't work. And somehow if people don't relate, it's just a waste of time for both of people, of the healer and of the person that needs healing. And the inner child, yes, I had the inner child workshop, and then I realized that I need to do the inner child private, like the healing session. And that was the beginning. That was the beginning that I actually, for the first time, I was able to connect to my inner child, and that was exactly what I was looking for years.
What was that like for you? What just briefly, what shifted for you in that connection?
How can I say that quickly? The ability to, well, before it was just words on paper, inner child, okay, what exactly that is. I could not feel that person inside of me. I knew that something terrible happened to me during my childhood, and many memories were actually blocked from me. Like I could recreate I have very interesting memory. I remember details, all the visual details, smells, many, many things, but I could not remember myself in the environment. It's just like my whole me in my childhood was erased, and it was in hiding big times.
Yeah,
So,
and I think that's why you were numb and you didn't have access. You didn't know you were sad. You didn't know, yeah, and so that connection started opening that. I presume, is that right for you?
yes, exactly. And when I actually have, during the meditation, well, first of all, the conversation that we had, and Elicia brought up some points that were like, aha, okay, I need to pay attention to that, and pay attention on the dynamic of me and my mother, and being and actually claiming my space in the world. And that's okay to put my needs first, because this was a big topic for me, that me was somewhere like lost in the background always. And then even further was my inner child. So during this first session of the connecting to the inner child, during the meditation, I was able to meet my inner child and see her. And I don't know, something just happened that I understood that this is me. You know, it's not just a visualization or something imaginary, but it's actually not outside, it's inside. And, you know, that day maybe I did not realize it fully, but I also got all the books that were recommended in the handout for the inner child. And I started doing the non-dominant hand writing and drawing. And this is when the magic actually started happening, that I started feeling this people in different aspects of me, in different ages, in different you know, emotional states of me, that started to communicate. And then I started noticing that actually my body is acting pretty much in correlation or in parallel to what this inner girl, like a little child, was feeling at that moment.
Yeah.
And it was just a gradual process of paying more attention and understanding that this is not something, you know, somebody is telling you that is happening to you. And I think this was missing in my sessions with the psychologist, is that she was telling me something like, yeah, okay, I got it. I write it on paper, but I didn't understand that this is me. I could not feel it.
Yeah, and it sounds like that was the beginning of you, as opposed to knowing, to experiencing. And and in that sense, you know, the inner child work is an experiential kind of is an experiential therapy. You're having a journey, and you meet part of yourself, and instead of just knowing, it all opens up as this fuller experience that brings so much with it. You know, if I can speak for you, I think that's what you said, really.
Yeah, exactly. So this is, yes, exactly. So until you feel it yourself or go through it yourself, it's just a waste of time. I'm sorry for saying that, but if you're not connected to a healer or to a person that is trying to help you, if you don't feel what that person is saying, if you're not reacting inside emotionally, physically, or if you don't understand really what they mean, it's just some other people's words,
right.
rather than realization.
You said, so you did all of the workshops, the online workshops, and started the process, and you were working with your inner child, with yourself, and you started to access your emotions and feeling and processing them on your own. Then you contacted us to do the Private Healing Immersion in Costa Rica. And I remember when you booked that, you said you already felt like a different person. You're like, wow. Like, even before that immersion, you started to say, like, you feel like what was that like? What were you experiencing in that time? And then what were you still experiencing that made you book the immersion?
Okay, I don't know how detailed you want me to describe.
Not too much.
Just summary, kind of briefly, yeah.
Okay, so what happened is actually in July I started. It also kind of started with the flower essence therapy practitioner training that I did in Nevada City with Flower Essence Society. There we are trained to do some counseling work, pretty deep psychology work, and we had to do the 8 levels. I don't want to go too deep, but there are 8 levels of soul development, and we had to do the partner work, and we had to go through all these 8 stages, I would say, and we did it. And I had an amazing partner with who was also very intuitive, and we were taking flower essences and we were asking questions, and so this was a beginning and a big catalyst. What started, and then I, because I know how to do it, I was making the custom flower essence blends for me, and that was a big shift already. It started some process, and I began to realize and started to connect the dots. So it led me to find your workshops. Then I deepened the practices. So I added the layer of when I knew how to connect to the inner child, I was digging deeper and deeper and deeper. At the same time, I was modifying, my formulas, and I was working a little bit on this, on the mother side, on the father side, just on emotions themselves. But then I realized that it's so intense, and this is something that I literally taught myself not to deal with, that I didn't know what to do with the emotions. Mm-hmm. Some days it was just so intense, I call it my personal hell. It was all for the best, for my growth, but it was just such a painful process. And I was seeking help big times because I didn't know with whom to talk and actually what to do. And okay, I have all these emotions that I feel. I journaled a lot, and that's where your workshop, Elicia, was just a tremendous help. But then I realized, what, when I have read a description for the healing immersion, I thought, again, intuitively, I need to do it. I need to clear all this shit, pardon my language, out of my system. And at that time I knew it's not a spiritual bypass. It's just something that literally need to be worked through with the professionals. And that's how I decided to sign up for the full day immersion. And this literally just changed my life in this 8 hours. And I, to be honest, I'm still processing what is happening, but in the evening, I was a different person, because
how long has it been? It's been 2 or 3 weeks?
It's been 3 weeks.
Yeah, okay.
It's been 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And the shift was, okay, the most important thing for me was, again, that before I was in a state of, I don't quite, okay, I know what you mean, but I don't necessarily feel that inside of me, and especially about the people around me. And during the session, I was able to see people in my life, the most important people in my life, for who they really are. And it imprinted in my head so vividly that by the end of the day, there was no going back for me. And
the imprint in your head, if you want to describe, like, the healing immersion we did in Costa Rica, which we offer in Costa Rica and in Atlanta. So we went down there, and so the imprint in your head came from the use of the objects and seeing Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I'm not sure how do you call this method correctly, like scientifically?
We call it core emotional experiential therapy, and Elicia and I developed it. And just to kind of lay out what was in the room, it was a big room, and we have 150 objects on a table, and people are encouraged, as we get to know them, we talk things through, and we've completed an assessment that's fairly detailed. People are encouraged to select objects that represent people in their lives, experiences they've had, different aspects of themselves, different aspects of the people in their lives, their career, their goals, their previous intimate relationships.
Inner child needs and wants.
Yeah, anything
shame,
that's relevant to the mental, psychological, emotional landscape. And so you saw the objects, and there you were, and we started talking about your family, probably, right? And and
all relationships.
Yeah,
about everything, and about my gifts too.
Yeah,
because this was part of the of the process, and I think this is so for me as a visual person. It was very important to match a person or a situation into to the object.
Yeah,
the way I arranged the figures, the figurines and the objects and the gemstones, it just made a certain pattern that made completely full sense to me.
Yeah.
And since what, it was 3 weeks, I still remember it so vividly that when I talked to my mother or my previous romantic partner, whom I just, I had trouble separating with that person, because deep inside, I always saw the best in people, and I couldn't see him for what a rotten, controlling freak he was, and what he was actually doing to me. And I always thought that I can save him, and I can make him happy, and that's actually by sacrificing my own happiness. But I can give him a chance and make him better.
We even had an object for that, the action that you would go through to try to get what you needed.
Right. And well, you said a couple things that are real important that I just want to kind of talk about. You said that how important the object was when you picked it and how much effort you put in. And that's really very common. Like we watch people, and it could take a while sometimes, but so in that process, it's like that object is getting imbued, is getting filled up with the kind of emotion and meaning and relational experience that you have with the person or with yourself or with your gifts and then when it goes in the field and then it starts relating to other objects in the layout, the relationships begin to be seen, and it creates this whole powerful and interrelated truth. And for example, in your work, and you can comment, feel free after I say this, the way your family related to your gifts was the way you related to them, and then how you maybe how your intimate relationship was relating to you and your gifts. Yeah. So part of your self-value and the core of yourself got formed in the way your family related or didn't relate appropriately to your gifts, and then that affected how you can, because your gifts are really just part of you. It's it's not like a separate thing. So if you don't feel great or weren't seen, then that comes in. I know I've said a lot, but go ahead and comment on however you want.
Yes, absolutely. The way my parents were not seeing me for who I am, and not appreciating whom I want to be or what my gifts were, gave me this questioning of my gifts. And in a way, I always felt like a freak, to be honest, or some kind of like non-belonging anywhere. And there was always a fear to show these gifts to the world, though I felt as really an urge that they need to be expressed.
Yeah.
So what happened was a dramatic change for me and a liberation. Because what I saw is that, in fact, I was so powerful in my family that they were basically afraid of me. Same in, in the Soviet Union regime where I was growing up as a kid. Same thing, individuality or a kid with some extra, like, not paranormal, but certain gifts. It wasn't accepted in the society. So, and I saw it like through the objects and through the pattern it was created. I just saw that many people in my life, they were afraid of how powerful I was, all the wisdom that I had, that despite how young I probably was, they were using their authority to mute me just because they were older or were authority figures. But in a way, they were just afraid to let me shine for various reasons. And acknowledging this and stepping into the power and ability to actually express who I am required and still requires a lot of courage and a constant reminder of who I am and who they are. Because picking the object that will represent my mother the way she is, every time I talk to her on the phone now and she starts triggering me and she tries to pull the carpet from under my feet, I just see those three figures actually, that I chose for her. And the release process that we did, actually, like me expressing all the anger and all the sadness and all these feelings of being unheard and being suppressed by almost like a tyrannic dictatorship of her, just because she didn't know what to do with me. Yeah. And the best that she could do is to shush me and completely make me obey and do what she wants me to do. So now, every time I'm with her and she tries to do that, despite how difficult, it's still not too much time have passed. And I just visualize what we did with the objects. And that's a tremendous help. Yeah. None of the techniques before worked. Yeah. So for this, I just want to bring a special attention.
So the objects really ground your understanding and give you a kind of access to some of the emotion and the processes that occurred. So just to clarify for people listening, the objects were laid out, and then we go into entering a process around wherever the energy is in the field, wherever in the layout. And as I remember, it was your mother had similar issues with her mother and going back and back to your great-grandmother. And there was a lot happening in that lineage of women that got moved. And in the end, you owned that power. But, and it shifted everything, I feel, for the whole lineage and for you. And I also really liked what you said. It's like, it's not like then you're all done and everything completely changes, but you realize that you have a choice in how to respond. And when you go into the same old pattern, you recognize it. And then because you did the work, and I'd like to hear your experience of some of that, of the work, that things shift in the interactions with those actual people.
Yes, absolutely. And I just want to share, I want to also talk about one of the most, so the working with objects was incredibly helpful. But can I talk about the rebirth?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So this, I think, was completely groundbreaking for me. So we did a deep meditation when I was guided through my first year of life, going month by month, and I was able to see, hear, listen, feel to what was going on around me, like in my first year. That was very powerful. there were a lot of insights that I understand now where it all began. And something that me being completely helpless and depending on people holding me, right, and nurturing me and giving love, I saw what actually was going on around. And that was horrible. And then we actually went back to my birth, which was a horrible, traumatic experience. And then we went even further back, month by month, and then almost week by week, to the process when I was created, right? A little tiny embryo. And that revealed another layer of family secrets that I wasn't aware, but somehow I received this information. I could hear the dialogues and what was happening around me when I was in the womb. And the pain of my mother, the hesitations of my parents to keep me or not to keep. And I just felt everything that this teeny tiny little thing was feeling. And that was scary, that was painful. But at the same time, I realized where many issues came from. Yeah. And being able to actually work through all these experiences. And this is where Elicia and Doug did incredible work on the support that my parents could not give me. And they basically led me through and gave me a second birth, but not a traumatic birth experience, but the one that I deserved. And I was welcomed to this world as a gifted, beautiful human being. Yeah. I was powerful, beautiful, and completely welcomed and loved. And
for the rebirth, along the ages, there was different messages and truth that you needed to hear that we helped you give to yourself as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. And it was a lot of
a healing and reparenting process.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of crying, but also like the way you hold me and you just comfort. And I felt a lot of pain that actually was a probably traumatic birth. And it was just a lot of even muscular pain and joint pain. And the way that you handled me, you literally were my parents. Yeah. And I just felt maybe for the first time in my life, I felt so loved and safe, and that I can just fall apart and surrender, and I won't fall into an abyss, but I will be held and supported and led through. So this is something that I don't know how to tell people this.
You just did. It was beautiful.
Yeah, but it's just such an experience that I wish everybody could go through. Because that's a gift of a proper birth and a proper parenting. If anybody did not have proper parents in their lives.
Yeah.
It's really amazing, like for you and for other people, a lot of other people that we worked with, the clarity of the memories or the feelings, even when you were a little embryo, and how crystallized and like this is true, that it is for you, and it's a really beautiful thing to see. And was there anything else other of the things that we did? I know you had an anger release. There were other things that we did that stand out for you, or that you remember that was part of the work.
Well, this is basically what we were doing all these eight hours, and I think the most difficult process for me was expressing anger and sadness. If you remember, that was just so difficult, and this is where I realized, and I think it's still work in progress, and I shouldn't think that mountain shifted already during the session, but this is a constant work in progress, and I should not forget to continue working it and putting my needs first.
Yeah.
And So the process of actually working with toxic people in my life, with expressing what needed to be expressed. And this was interesting when you were like, come on, you were almost like guiding me through, come on, like express it in a certain way. I became angry. Why are you pushing? I cannot scream. I cannot. It's just, at some point you feel this resistance. You know, sometimes it's of course it's much safer to just stay in your safety zone and with all this protection that you build around you. And there was a lot of, yeah,
let me explain. You've already kind of laid out the basis of it, that we were kind of like cheering you, and like we would use our own anger feelings to encourage you just by screaming a little and say, ah, and then it took a while and you know, a few minutes, which probably felt like a lifetime for you, but we knew when you were coming from the bottom of your belly with your anger. And once that happened, like it all shifted. Like for us, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to just say also, it was I was right there with you, you know, with it, and you turned to me, Anna, and you're like, I can't do this. You know, it was like, and I was like, yes, you can, you know, and it was like that kind of like, you can, it's okay, and here's how. And then you just got past the mind's, you know, resistance, and then eventually it was like,
that's it.
And then you were able to really express yourself more fully through the process when you were talking to different people after that, in the structure, in the field with the objects and things like that. And you, at one point towards the end, Doug and I just kind of sat back because you were so clear in your power and doing what you needed to do. And that's really so beautiful.
And we were giggling because it was so free. Like it was like seeing this, like for a metaphor, just like this animal released into the freedom for the first time.
Yeah. With your instincts.
So free.
And
it was just so natural. And
so we want to just kind of wrap this up with any final words about your experience and results afterwards.
Just quickly to just sum it up, the shift was immediate and so profound. I myself, no, I don't want to say I don't want to believe. I believe it, and I just want to share how powerful that was, because I had to face my mother right after the session, and just briefly. But since that moment, like when I stopped by at her house to pick up my dog, and since that time, she acts like she backed off, and she acts as if she still triggers me, she still tries, but she acts like she's afraid of me. She actually shows her what was actually hidden on the background. The deep inside, she's just afraid of my individuality, my courage, my boldness, my, you know, all my gifts. And she's jealous. She was just jealous and afraid of. And many other things just shifted, and seems that, you know, first of all, I continue to release things constantly, and I continue working with the flower essences that are, you know, continue the release process. And now I know how, and I know that when I need time, everything goes on hold, and I need to sit down and I need to work it out. And in a complete honesty, it's like something shifted, and I'm not a nice white and fluffy person anymore, which I pretended to be, just to you know, please everybody and make everybody else happy. Doesn't matter what I want or need. So this is gone, like erased.
Yeah, now you're a nice, multicolored, multi-textured person. Like,
yes.
And I just got to say, if you don't mind, could you share what happened the very next morning, out of the blue, if you would?
Oh, should I? Yeah, the next morning I've met my love. Yes.
Can I just add something?
Yes.
The old pattern arrived the next day as well, correct?
What do you mean? Which
The old man, the other man.
Oh yeah, that one arrived as well, but I just could not stand him physically. It's just two things arrived at the same time.
Right.
The person who sees me and sees my gifts and sees my soul arrived, and at the same time,
next day you got contacted.
The very next morning.
Yeah.
Also, some business development happened that I actually thought that, I was a little bit concerned or afraid. I did some baby steps, but I think I was kind of not confident enough to move on. But then the next morning, that yoga studio contacted me back and offered me kind of a partnership and work with them.
Yeah.
And, but I was ready to accept this and face it.
So let me summarize. Yeah, I just want to summarize what happened. So the next day, that night you went into your mom's house, you experienced a difference there. Then the next day you got contacted with someone who now you're in a very early and a very intense love relationship.
Who sees you and supports you the ways you always needed that you didn't have before.
And next day, the boyfriend that you have had that you had realized that there were some issues with, you saw him and there was no way you could continue in that.
No.
Because the dynamics were not self-affirming enough.
Yes.
And it all happened
business opportunity.
Oh, and the business opportunity. This is the magic of the work. And when you shift on the inside and start feeling deserving and that you can hold yourself and be who you are, the universe responds.
Yeah.
And you start getting more of what you've always wanted.
And I want to honor your clarity, your power also contributed to all of this. And so it was a combination between the core emotional experiential therapy process over 8 hours, your clarity and power and insights, and your persistence into your own process before and after as well.
Yeah.
And that magical land of Costa Rica down there in Montes the Teresa area, which we've done retreats there before and also experienced the magic of the jungle in Costa Rica, which is really powerful. So and your flower essence and essential oils. So there's a lot of support.
A lot went into it.
And we absolutely loved working with you and still enjoy working with you and love working with your products as well. And really appreciate you being here and sharing and being vulnerable and sharing your story for everyone.
Thanks so much.
So many people can relate to what you've experienced and what you went through that could help them as well. So thank you.
And look at you take that in.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. I cannot stop celebrating the process and you guys, and I just try to spread the word as much as I can, as vividly as I can, because everybody needs it, I think everybody, because the world is suffering and, everybody deserves to be happy. And the more happy people and happy and healed people we have, that's the chance to heal the earth.
Yeah.
Right.
And go on and move on and thrive, not leave, not survive, but thrive.
Yeah.
And we're so happy for you.
Yes.
I'm thriving.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys. It was good to see you.
Yes, you too.
You too.
Love you. Bye.
Love you too. Bye.